my country and the African continent needs a new breed of leaders. It's the most unpredictable election. We're not into politics for the short time.
What motivated you to, to throw your hat in the ring of politics?
I was an illegal immigrant in Sweden.
Do you think that is...
They violated their own law. They were being negligent of their own law.
But obviously, it's not inclusive. It could be in terms of age. It could be in terms of gender.
Now, they've excluded a woman.
Connect Africa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Connect Africa. Today, we are going to discuss on the upcoming election of the Gambia on 4th December, actually in 2 days. So for that, we have here today with us Dr. Ismailia Ceesay. He is a political party leader of the Citizens Alliance. Welcome, Dr. Ismailia Ceesay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
And his candidacy was recently, a few weeks ago, was rejected. Let me just say briefly about Dr. Ismailia Ceesay. He is born in Sierra Leone and moved to Sweden, so where he grew up. He was also there a chairman of the Organization of the Gambian in Sweden. Educational-wise, he holds BA in political science, and he did his MA and PhD in African Studies in Edinburgh in Scotland. Unlike other Africans, I would say, he reversed the brain drain and he came back home, and where he was serving as a lecturer at the University of The Gambia. So recently, your candidacy for a presidential, you were running for a president, and that was rejected. Before we reason about the rejection, tell us about what motivated you to, to throw your hat in the ring of politics in the Gambia. Yeah, if there's anything I'm missing from you that we have to know, you can tell us also.
Thank you very much. I think everything is in order. Just a little bit of rectification there. I was not born in Sierra Leone. I was born in the Gambia, but I did my high school in Sierra Leone. So I basically grew up in Sierra Leone. I did my primary education in the Gambia, but did my secondary education in Sierra Leone. Just for that minor rectification there. Obviously, I was living in Europe for close to 15 to 20 years, studying and working in Europe. And I realized that my country and the African continent needs a new breed of leaders. Leaders that are selfless, that are visionary, and that could also try to find the solution to the misalignment between the potential of our countries and the leadership that we've been having since independence. It means that there's a mismatch between what the country can do in terms of the resources it has, the human resources and all other types of resources, and what we've achieved so far since independence. And since then, I had made a pledge that I want to be part of that generation of young Gambians that will transform and build the new Gambia. And because of that, I knew that I needed, for me to succeed in that, I needed the tools. And that tool is knowledge. Therefore, I did not, just to remind viewers, when I was moving to Sweden, I didn't move to Sweden to study. I moved to Sweden to work as a migrant. I was an illegal immigrant in Sweden. I went there to work and not to study. But after many years of living and working in Sweden, I decided that, look, I want my country, I want the African continent to be like Europe, the development, the rights of the people, the dignity that the people are living in, the proper healthcare system, the proper education system, and everything else that comes with it. I want Africa to be like this. I want Gambia to be like this. And I realized that I can only achieve this together with my fellow Africans if we have the right tools, and those tools are education. That was when I decided to quit my job and went to study at Stockholm University. I studied political science there. So basically, the idea was to come back home to Gambia and create a new type of leadership that is selfless, that can be able to, and that is patriotic, that can be able to harness the country's resources and invest the wealth created from these resources on the people of our country.
Interesting. Yeah. So walk us through the journey of the formation of this political party, the Citizens Alliance, and up to where it was your candidacy was rejected. Walk us through that, how you turned yourself from the world of the academics into politics.
Well, when I came home to the Gambia in 2009 after finishing my master's from Edinburgh University, I was thinking, where would my knowledge really be useful to the Gambia? Then there was a dictator in office, in power. I didn't want to work for him because working for him means empowering him through my knowledge, using my knowledge. So I decided that, look, my whole mission is to build a new country, is to modernize this country. And I cannot do it alone. I need young people to work with me. But if I'm armed with what is needed and the young people are supposed to go with me are not armed, then my entire crusade would be futile. So I decided to go and teach at the university to prepare young people and equip them with the knowledge needed to build the country. Then I applied for a job at the University of The Gambia. I got employed in 2009 and I started teaching political science. After 2 years, I decided to go back to Edinburgh to do my PhD, going back and forth teaching and doing my PhD at the same time. I finished in 2016. I came home. This coincided with the change in 2016 when the coalition government was put in place and the Ageism was removed from power. There are so many expectations with this new coalition government, but then at some point the hopes were shattered and we realized that perhaps it's time for people like us to enter politics because it's clearly it's about solving problems, it's about solutions. It's about ideas. And if we believe that we had the ideas, we understood the problems and we had solutions to these problems, it was our right to enter politics. So how do we enter politics was a major question. Do we join existing parties or do we really form our own entity? So we did research, we looked at each and every existing party and see whether their values, their principles, and their ideas align with our thinking of how politics should be. And we didn't see any of them. One of the critical issues are two. One is the internal party democratic structure. We realized that most of these parties lack very strong and effective internal party democracy, in the sense that you have parties where you have one leader leading that party for 20, 30 years. And everything revolves around that leader. We don't believe that it should be the way. We believe that there'll be a time when young people or citizens will not only demand democracy from the state, they also demand democracy from within the political parties. And that any party that is not willing to reform and adapt to changing circumstances will become redundant. So we realize that no, we don't subscribe to this kind of political parties where one man leads the party for many years, therefore. But also, what about the ideas, the vision? Most of the parties were speaking for today. That is the problems of today. We don't have proper healthcare, we don't have proper education, we don't have good roads, there are no jobs. They're just highlighting the problems and not coming up with solutions to these problems. But not only solutions to today's problems, but also solutions anticipating future problems in 25 years. I want to start finding solutions to these problems now by looking at demographic trends, population growth. How will our population be in 2050? How many will be young people? How many jobs will they need? How many will persons living with disabilities? How much housing will they need? How many roads do we need to build for our cars in 25 years? So what kind of healthcare system will we have? What kind of diseases will be plagued by our people? You need to start, how many nursery schools do we need to build? You need to start that planning now. And we didn't see any of these parties talking about those things. So we realized that now it's time for Gambia to have a new political party that has strong internal democratic processes, that first builds the systems and the processes within the party that makes it strong. So the people who align with the party don't align because they're an individual, they align because of its ideas. That will make the party a long-term party, but also create a kind of a vision for the country that doesn't only focus on today's problems and finding solutions to it, but also start building the country for the next generation, because we believe that it takes one generation to change the fortunes of the next generation. We realized that we didn't find those kind of thinking in each of these parties. I initiated the Citizens Alliance. It was my idea, but I knew that I didn't want to own it. I didn't want to make it look like I go and register and I own it and I decide. No. So I approached a few people who I think are like-minded, who are progressive thinking, and sold the idea to them. Tell them that, look, this is my idea, but I don't want to own it. I want us to come together and as partners and build it and create it and make it a big party. When it comes to leadership, later on, once the party is built and we have members, we can go and elect the leader. The person who the party has belief in, they can elect that person. It can be me, it can be someone else. They subscribed to it, they came together, we created the party, we made sure that nobody paid for the registration fee individually, we all contributed to pay for it, so that we take ownership, so that everybody owns the party and feel that we are a partner. We registered it, and then after 1 year, we went to Congress, and I was elected as the leader of the party, and we went to work. Our strategy in terms of building a base was not based on patronage. It was based on reaching out to the people and selling the idea of the party to them through what they call retail politics. We go village to village, we go house to house, we go market to market, we go vote to vote, we go garden to garden, we go garden to garden. Wherever people are, we go to them, to their houses, to their villages. We believe that we cannot sit in the capital here and think that we know the problems of the people in the villages or in the places where they work. We got to meet them there, talk to them about their problem. So we have an idea as to what are the problems of the people. Sometimes we're surprised that they even don't have solutions to those problems, but they need to be empowered to be able to solve their own problems. So we started that campaign 2 years ago. We've been out everywhere for the past 2 years. And since then, the party has been growing, the fastest growing party in the country today. And then when elections came, we decided to put up a candidate for presidency. We fulfilled all the requirements for presidency. We submitted to the IEC, and our candidature was unfairly and inappropriately rejected because the IEC violated their own laws and failed to follow due process.
And IEC is what it stands for?
The Independent Electoral Commission, the body responsible for managing and conducting elections. So we went to the courts knowing that the IEC acted wrongly, and the courts vindicated us, saying that yes, indeed, the IEC violated their own laws. They don't follow due process when they were rejecting us, and they gave us a chance to rectify any error we had, and we should be allowed to run, and which we did. We went back to the IEC, we submitted, but obviously there was a determination from the IEC that they didn't have the capacity to accommodate more than 6 political parties, which were first accepted. Because why? It was going to open a Pandora's box. 16 political parties were rejected on flimsy ground. So if a court order says that we should be allowed to run, it means that IEC will be forced to, at some point, perhaps accept at least 10 of these, which would be a logistical nightmare, considering the fact that the kind of electoral system we have, it's not paper balloting, it's marble and the drum. It is very, it has a lot of logistics in it. It means each candidate should have his own drum with marbles and pictures on it and everything. It means that with 10 political parties or 16 political parties, it means 16 drums multiplied by 1,555 polling stations. It's a logistical nightmare. And the IEC thought that the addition was going to be final because there's a very old law in the Electoral Act which says that their decision is final and cannot be subject to the court of law. We challenged that, telling them that that section, that provision itself is unconstitutional because it was a decree that wasn't amended when we had a new constitution, and no law supersedes the constitution. If the constitution says that every Gambian has a right to run for office and to vote, and there should be no unreasonable hindrances to any Gambian's desire or aspiration to run for office, how can a law which is subordinate to the constitution really inhibit that? So we went to the courts and we won the case. There was a landmark ruling. For the first time, a political party takes the IEC to court and wins. In fact, takes the IEC to court. And when they realized that now we won the case, but there was no way they could accommodate other parties to run for the office, they still did not follow the court order. That is why we are now commencing. In fact, we've already commenced contempt of court proceedings against the IEC.
As per my reading, so far there are 6 presidential candidates, correct?
There are 6 presidential candidates.
I see that, relatively, I also had months ago, I had the opportunity to interview Brother Bankole or Banki, and who is also his presidential candidacy is rejected. So I see this rejection of the younger generation candidates like you and him, and there are others. If when I see the age of the one who are like including Amadou Barrow and the others, the rest of the other 5 candidates, they're like much elder, like between the age of close to 60 to 70 something. So do you think that is like a deliberate not to include the younger candidates? What's your take on that?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because I have no evidence to suggest that that it was premeditated to exclude people based on age or generation. I don't want to make that assumption because I don't have any evidence. The evidence I have is that they violated their own law, they were being negligent of their own law, and they lacked capacity and competence to run that body. That evidence I have based on the dealings with them. But to say that they indeed excluded us because we are younger candidates, I wouldn't suggest that because I have no evidence.
But obviously it's not inclusive. It could be in terms of age, it could be in terms of gender. I mean, I don't see that. It's all like in the same category for me, the candidates.
Yeah, obviously, we've heard things like, you guys are still young, you don't have to run for office. We live in a culture where, in some instances, generational, people think like that. But I don't think an institution has a right to exclude people, even though elections are supposed to be inclusive, to ensure that everybody who's qualified in accordance with the Constitution runs for office, and there should be no unreasonable hindrances. We've seen that the IEC was using an exclusionary tactics, finding the very small excuse to exclude candidates, even candidates who meet all the constitutional requirements, and which are the foundations, which are very fundamental. Now, they've excluded a woman. There was only one woman candidate in this whole thing. She was excluded. They've excluded all the young people, like we said, that also wanted to contest. And perhaps that can give some people reason to believe that the IEC premeditatedly excluded women and young candidates. But like I said, there is no evidence to suggest such an assumption.
Okay. Some time ago, the information minister, the current information minister, said that one of the greatest achievements of the president Adama Barrow is freedom of speech. And you have this incident, correct me if I am wrong, that you were arrested for something that has to do for your expression. Do you think this is correct, that freedom of expression is respected in the Gambia?
Well, yes, it is very respected now. The political space is now more open than ever before. Obviously, during the Jawara era, it was very open, so we cannot compare that. But from Jammeh's era, comparatively, and now, the political space is more open. People are more free and how to express themselves. People are not in fear of being arrested or intimidated when expressing themselves. We have seen a proliferation of media houses, both online, digital media, and even traditional conventional media. We've seen how people now make calling on radios and speak their mind. Some go to the extent of even insulting political leaders in this country without any serious, any repercussions or any intimidation. So I think he's right that that's an achievement. Do you call it an achievement? Yes, in the sense that even though it wasn't given to us by the government, but they did not deny us those rights as compared to Yahya Jammeh. Yahya Jammeh denied us because rights are guaranteed by the Constitution. And the Constitution is our Constitution. We make the Constitution. It's for us. So when rights are guaranteed by the Constitution, no human being, no leader has a right to deny those rights. Yahya Jammeh denied us those rights. Barrow did not deny us those rights. He did not deny the Gambian those rights. He let Gambians enjoy those rights. He let Gambians enjoy those privileges. Yes, I was arrested in the early days of the coalition, but I think the reaction from that arrest really woke them up to say, hey, times have changed. This is a new era. We cannot allow this, because it nearly tore the country apart, because people wanted to come out and demonstrate. It attracted a lot of criticism and opprobrium from across the world. And they realized that, no, we live in a new era now. We cannot take rights away from people. I think they learned a lesson from that. And since then, we have not seen or heard anybody being arrested by the state for merely expressing their views. Rather, is the contrary. People are free to speak now. People speak their mind. People say whatever they want to say, to the extent that people even, some people, that's not my view, but some people are of the view that some people are abusing democracy by using foul language, using hate speech, using discriminatory language, and justifying it. They say, oh, we live in a democracy, now we can say whatever we want to say. So yes, rights are more, they've not been curtailed, but they've not been denied. We've not been denied, even though we cannot say they gave us those rights. Those rights are guaranteed by the Constitution, but we've not been denied those rights or the exercise of those rights thereof, as opposed to the Jammeh era.
What can we expect from the upcoming election?
Well, it's the most unpredictable election, because you have to understand that many things have changed since 2016. Therefore, we cannot really use any indicators to make projections. There can be no benchmarks. Many things have changed in the sense that, one, the actors have changed. We've got more candidates now, unprecedented. The number of voters have changed. We've almost 1 million voters now, unprecedented. More young voters. We don't have an indication as to how young people vote previously in this contest. They are not voting before as a bloc. So we didn't know exactly. We have more women voters now. There is no data that tells us this how women vote. And because of rural-urban migration, many people who live in rural Gambia now live in urban Gambia, and they registered in urban Gambia. How are they voting? Are they voting like their kin are voting in the towns and villages where they come from? Or will dynamics within urban Gambia change their voting pattern? All these things are very new and fresh. The only thing that has remained the same is that the laws are the same. Within this very, very changing and dynamic context, where it's now more fragile, the context is more fragile now, very polarized and very volatile, amid rising inflation, amid rising youth unemployment, and so many other things. The electoral laws are still the same, they've not changed. We had expected that with a transition from autocracy or a quasi-democratic system to a democratic system, albeit a very fragile one, would change the laws to strengthen the institutions and make this democracy work. There was no law, no new electoral laws, no new constitution. So that makes it very difficult to really predict these elections. Unfortunately, opinion polls are not something that we are used to using in the Gambia to help us have an idea as to how elections will unfold, even though they've been one recently done by SEPRAS, an institution within the university. But here, in place of opinion polls, people look at the crowd size that a particular party can be able to gather one evening, and that gives us an idea, oh, party X, do you see their crowd? It seems like they were winning. And then if another party come with a bigger crowd, oh no, this party is winning. But overall, by and large, there is no empirical evidence which tells us that the crowd size is an indication to tell us how political party. There is no evidence. Opinion polls are more scientific, because they use a scientific method to measure public perception. The opinion polls recently, both opinion polls done by SEPRAS, indicate that the incumbent is likely to win. But again, opinion polls have failed in other countries to predict elections, and there is no guarantee that they will succeed this time. So like I said, we don't know what to expect. It's very fluid. The dynamics are changing very quickly. It could go either way.
Okay, interesting. Well, we wish all the Gambians, to have the best. But yeah, this will be our final question. what can you tell to, the people who looked up to you, the younger generation, to the Gambians and to Africans even, like what kind of encouragement you give them, what advice you give them who aspires, to be like you as a leader? And what can we expect from Dr. Ismailia Ceesay after this as well?
Well, to believe in ourselves as Africans, as Gambians, to believe in our potentials, to be able to change our condition on our own without relying on external forces to change our situation. We only can change our situation. Nobody can change our situation. Therefore, for you to change, we need to believe in ourselves. We need to believe in our potential. We need to be selfless and be ready to make that sacrifice for country and for continent. It's only through that sacrifice we can change this country. If you see today, the West is the West. Everybody wants to go to the West. They made sacrifices. Previous leaders made sacrifices to ensure that the current generation is having its privileges. America, Europe was not built in the past 10, 15, 20 years. It took generations and huge sacrifices for them to have what they have today. So it also, if we want to build the Gambia for the next generation that can live in a dignified life, or the continent of Africa for every African to live a dignified life, the next world, our generation has to make that sacrifice. We are unfortunate that the previous generation did not make that sacrifice. That is why today we are what we are. Our young people are living the continent in droves, to the extent that they rather die at sea than to live in their own country. We don't want that to happen to the next generation. So my advice is for us to believe in ourselves, get the right knowledge that is needed, and then come together, those who are in the diaspora, to find ways to come home. And we build Africa for the future. And also for these elections, my advice is for everybody to be peaceful, to go vote peacefully and to avoid violence, because if you create violence, the leader you want to be in power after the election will not be able to govern. So then your vote will be wasted. So obviously it's for every young person not to be used as an instrument of political violence, to vote wisely, to vote peacefully and go home. And to the political leaders who are contesting, that if anybody who loses, you accept defeat. If you think that there are malpractices, that you have evidence thereof, go to the courts and seek redress, rather than urging your supporters or militants to go into the streets and use violence and do wanton destruction. That is my advice. Peace is everything. If we cannot allow a situation where there will be post-election violence in this country. So let's make sure that whatever we do, whatever we say, our actions, our deeds, our words are geared towards maintaining the peace of this country.
And Dr. Ceesay and the Citizens Alliance will continue in the political party?
Yes, of course. Like I said, we're not into politics for the short time. We didn't get into politics for only these 2021 elections. We are here for the long term. We are building a political party that will outlive all of us, that will be here for the next generation and beyond. Therefore, now, immediately after this election is over, we are starting our campaign for the National Assembly elections, which will take place in 3 months. And then we'll also start our campaign for local government elections for 2023. And then thereafter, we'll start our campaign for 2026. The party is here to stay, and we don't believe that you can change this country only by being president. In fact, it's easier to change country from the below. So grassroots is even more important to us. Local government and parliament is much more important to us than the presidential, because the president is a president. But I mean, the local government is more intelligible to the people. It's more closer to the people. So once we have certain councils that we have control over and we are in parliament, we can define the trajectory of this country by making sure that we take the lead in the reforms that are needed, by changing the bylaws in parliament, but also making sure we provide basic services to our people by being in the council. So yes, politics continues for Citizens Alliance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ismaila Ceesay. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Africa.